cross-contamination, something I really wanted to share. I had posted a short video about flipping a panel, which was this one. I had to turn it over the side of this side. I still have to glaze this side. Before I get involved with mixing up my glazing compound that I'm using, the putty, the mud, whatever you want to call it, I wanted to talk about cross-contamination. And this is very important because I've noticed so many people that, you cut your glass, you grind your glass, and you have to wash your glass off with God knows what, Dawn or rubbing alcohol or God knows what. So I needed to go through a very simple explanation of how I do things and why. Now, I have to keep moving the camera on. I use kerosene for cutting fluid. And I know a lot of people go, oh my God, kerosene is flammable. Yes, it is flammable, but it needs a wick to burn. It's not like gasoline. You pour a little bit out on the table, okay? It needs something to burn with. Okay, now if I did this with gasoline, I'd probably have an explosion or a flash. See? It's not even, you can put a cigarette out in kerosene. You put your cigar out in kerosene. It's not going to blow up like gasoline, and it's evaporative. So, I cut my glass with using kerosene as a cutting fluid instead of a heavyweight oil like 3-in-1 or sewing machine oil or God knows what, or stuff that they sell you in the glass supply stores. Okay, see how it's evaporating already? Okay, and then when I grind, if I'm doing copper foil and I'm grinding, the water takes off the kerosene. So after I dry the glass off, before I copper foil it, all I really have to do is to wipe the edges, wipe the dust off with a towel that is slaved to just that. And that's where the cross-contamination comes in, is that, if you're using a towel that you've cleaned, you've cleaned glass with, you've wiped flux or God knows what off of a window or glass cleaner or whatever, and you wipe your glass on that, then your foil's not going to stick, okay? Because the contamination that's in the towel gets on the glass, and the copper foil's not going to stick. So I keep a towel around in the shop just for that, and I had to learn that the hard way. I did have a helper that, I had him wipe some glass off after it was ground, and the copper foil wasn't sticking, and I said, well, which towel did you use? And he picked up the one he'd been cleaning windows and wiping flux off of windows with, okay? So I had to give him the same kind of speech. So that's one kind of cross-contamination. Now, when I did the window, did a little video about flipping this window over, someone said, well, if you get a work board, then you don't have to worry about scratching the glass. Well, when you get pieces of plywood cut up, and I mean, I'm not going to run out and get a 24-36 or a couple inches larger piece of plywood every time I make a window. I mean, that's just crazy for me. I mean, that's not cost effective for me. So, one of the things that I do and advocate is that you have to be fanatical about keeping your table clean. Just like, I use table brushes to brush my table off, okay? So, this is a new one, okay? This is a new table brush. This is what they look like new. Well, after about 20 years, they look like this, okay? Wear and tear. But one of the things that I advocate is to get like, after you clean your table off, is to get like, take a leather glove and rub your table if necessary, just to make sure there's no little things sticking up, like nails or solder stuck in holes, or sometimes you use thumbtacks, and you pull the thumbtack out, the head comes off and the point stays in. We have to pull that out immediately, okay? So basically that's one way to prevent scratching your glass with your table. Okay, or your lead. I mean, I'm going to be going over it after I've glazed it, and I'm using the brushes to scrub with the plaster of Paris or the whiting to clean everything off, get all the excess grease and everything off. But that's another form of cross-contamination. Okay, is that I don't use my table brushes to polish the lead after I've glazed the window. I use a specific brush, okay? And I don't use this as a table brush. That's another way of cross-contamination. I had another helper, yes, ages ago, decades ago, that used my glazing brush to wipe off the glass table. Then he went to, polishing, and he got a piece of glass picked up in it. Okay, so the brushes I use on my leaded glass windows get used for nothing else, and I have to be fanatical about that. Okay, because nothing's going to scratch a piece of glass in a window, especially if something's going to show up like a clear glue chip, as a piece of glass stuck in a brush like this. So you have to be very, very careful and fanatical about keeping these clean and slave to just one specific use. Now, with the tables, okay, they get a little rough after a while, okay, but as long as there's nothing metal or glass sticking up out of it, it's not going to scratch the lid, and it's not going to scratch the glass, okay. Now, after about 20 years, because I've been doing this for a hell of a long time, okay, I'll replace the top, okay, and I don't throw the top away. I'll cut it up into strips, and make a glass case out of it. Very simple. Or I could use it for if I'm crating something. Okay, I don't want to throw things away. I'm not that wasteful, let's say. So cross-contamination is something we all need to be aware of, and to keep our product safe and without having to run into, because I've heard people go, well, you can get the scratches out of that. Yeah, but the kit for the wholesale price was like $75. And someone had mentioned, or you might have heard of this guy called Ben Franklin. Okay, I think he was really important because they put his face on $100 bills here in the States, and he said things like, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Well, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So I think that kind of covers a lot of cross-contamination. Okay, the same thing goes along with, fluxes. I use one kind of flux to solder my windows. I use another kind of flux to solder to the zinc when I'm using zinc. Okay, but I have to be careful. I don't stick, the brush that I use for flux to solder to zinc into my flux that I use to solder for, for lead or copper foil, because that's another form of cross-contamination. So everybody needs to see this, I think. And thank you. God bless, and have a good day. Bye-bye.